The British Empire did not conquer India through military power alone. One banker and one financial empire helped open the gates. While history remembers the battles and the generals, the true key to the East India Company's rise in India was money. Money financed the troops, bought the betrayals, and reshaped the destiny of Bengal, the richest province in India. Hidden in the shadows of the British Empire's expansion was one of the wealthiest banking families in the world, the House of Jagat Seth. This powerful Indian banking dynasty controlled Bengal's treasury, its mint, and the flow of gold and silver across the region. Their influence was so vast that they could elevate a Nawab or remove one. Their alliance with the British East India Company during the Battle of Plassey in 1757 changed the course of Indian history. By providing critical funding against the Nawab of Bengal, they helped establish British rule that would last nearly 2 centuries. The consequences of those financial decisions reshaped the economy, the politics, and the future of millions of people. This is the hidden story of how the Jagat Seth family, the bankers of Bengal, became kingmakers in the struggle for power. This is the forgotten financial engine behind the rise of the British Empire in India. This is the story of Jagat Seth, the banker who changed India's history. To understand the House of Jagat Seth, we must first understand Bengal in the early 18th century. During the later Mughal period, Bengal was among the richest regions not only in India, but globally. Its economy thrived on agriculture, river trade, and a booming textile industry renowned for fine muslin and silk. The fertile lands of the Ganges and Brahmaputra river systems produced rice, sugarcane, and opium in abundance. European trading companies, Portuguese, Dutch, French, and English, competed for access to Bengal's markets. Its port city, Murshidabad, emerged as one of the wealthiest cities in the world. Revenue from Bengal alone exceeded that of the entire British Isles. Political authority rested with the Nawabs of Bengal, semi-independent rulers under the weakening Mughal Empire. The Mughal decline created openings for regional powers, merchants, and bankers to exert influence. In this environment of economic prosperity, the role of financiers grew increasingly significant. They controlled credit, treasury operations, and the supply of coinage. Among these financial elites, none rose as high as the House of Jagat Seth. The family traced their roots to John merchant bankers who migrated from Nagar in Rajasthan to Bengal in the late Mughal era. Their ascent accelerated when they established themselves in Murshidabad, the administrative capital of Bengal. Their business model extended far beyond ordinary banking. Financiers to the Nawabs, treasury managers for Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, controllers of mints that produced the region's currency, commercial traders dealing in precious metals, textiles, and international trade routes. Their reputation for reliability and vast reserves of capital led Mughal Emperor Farrukhsiyar to bestow upon them the honorific title Jagat Seth, meaning Banker of the World. By the early 1700s, European observers described them as possibly the richest banking house in existence. Their financial power made them indispensable partners in governance. No major military expedition, administrative expenditure, or diplomatic negotiation could proceed without their funding and approval. In a region where coin availability determined authority, the Jagat Seth family became kingmakers. Wealth translated into influence. Influence created expectations. Expectations soon placed them at the center of Bengal's political rivalries. By the mid-18th century, the British East India Company sought not merely trade concessions, but political control. Their success in southern India and competition with other European powers encouraged strategic expansion. Bengal, as the richest province, was a prime target. Tensions escalated when the company provided refuge to individuals whom Siraj declared criminals and continued to strengthen fortifications without his consent. In response, Siraj ud-Daulah attacked Calcutta, capturing it in 1756. This event provoked the company to send a well-armed expedition led by Robert Clive. The company needed intelligence, allies, and, crucially, money. This is where the Jagat Seths entered the story as decisive actors. The Jagat Seth family assessed Bengal's political landscape and concluded that Siraj ud-Daulah's leadership threatened their economic security. They feared confiscations, instability, and unpredictable governance. Preserving financial interests required a change in power. Key conspirators emerged: Jagat Seth Mahtab Rai, head of the banking house; Mir Jafar, military commander dissatisfied with the Nawab; Omichund, merchant and intermediary; British East India Company leadership, including Robert Clive. The plan was simple in principle, yet complex in execution. Replace Siraj ud-Daulah with Mir Jafar, a figure more amenable to British and banking elite interests. To achieve this, financing was required. The Jagat Seths provided the British with funds to maintain their military expedition and secure loyalties through payments and promises. Bribes were arranged for key commanders within the Nawab's forces to ensure they would not fight effectively. This covert arrangement would culminate in one of the most consequential battles in Indian history. On June 23, 1757, the British East India Company army, significantly outnumbered, faced Siraj ud-Daulah's forces near the village of Plassey. However, numbers did not tell the full story. Large sections of the Nawab's army, under commanders aligned with the conspiracy, held back and refused to engage. Only a portion of Siraj's troops fought with full commitment. The British forces, disciplined and supported by artillery, faced limited resistance. The outcome was decisive. The Nawab was defeated. He fled, was eventually captured, and executed. Mir Jafar was installed as the new Nawab, effectively a puppet ruler under company influence. The British East India Company now held real authority in Bengal's governance. The financial foundations of this victory were laid by the Jagat Seths. Following the Battle of Plassey, the East India Company demanded massive payments from the new Nawab. Vast sums from Bengal's treasury flowed into company coffers. The transfer of wealth to the British accelerated. Mir Jafar, struggling under British financial expectations, could not maintain stability. Internal dissatisfaction grew. The company replaced Mir Jafar with Mir Qasim, another candidate expected to cooperate. Initially, the Jagat Seths supported Mir Qasim as well, hoping for reforms more favorable to their position. However, when conflict later erupted between Mir Qasim and the British, the bankers again favored the company to preserve their interests. Financial dependence became a tool of political control. Bengal's autonomy rapidly diminished. The East India Company, with access to unprecedented revenue, expanded its military reach across India. Bengal, once the economic engine of the Mughal Empire, now fueled British imperial ambition. Despite earlier influence, the bankers' position weakened after Plassey. The company, now enriched and increasingly confident, sought to cut intermediaries and control financial systems directly. Major shifts contributed to the family's decline. Transfer of the capital from Murshidabad to Calcutta, company control of minting operations, implementation of revenue policies like the permanent settlement, and reduced reliance on private Indian bankers. The very power the Jagat Seths had helped create made their services less necessary. Their wealth was gradually eroded through political marginalization, economic restructuring, and shifting centers of power. Their influence disappeared over subsequent decades. By the late 19th century, the family was a shadow of its former self. The final known descendant passed away in the early 20th century, reportedly in poverty. The dynasty that once financed rulers and shaped politics ended without recognition or authority. The story of Jagat Seth illuminates a crucial but often overlooked truth. Empires depend on capital. The British East India Company did not conquer India solely through superior military technology or battlefield strategy. They relied on loans to fund troops, bribes to secure defections, and political financing to influence successions. Private Indian bankers played a foundational role in these financial arrangements. The House of Jagat Seth exemplified how merchant bankers became pivotal actors in transitional periods of history. Supporting one faction or another could alter geopolitical outcomes far beyond the intentions of those involved. Their decisions were motivated by financial self-interest and a desire for economic stability. The broader consequences, the transformation of India under British colonial rule, were not necessarily part of their design. Yet their actions remain inseparable from the empire that followed. Historians have varied perspectives on the role of the Jagat Seths. Some emphasize pragmatism. They navigated unstable political conditions. They supported forces likely to preserve economic order, and their choices reflected survival rather than betrayal. Others argue collaboration. They actively undermined Bengal's autonomy, their financial power accelerated colonial dominance, and they favored personal gain over regional sovereignty. Both interpretations draw from available sources, yet it is important to acknowledge the complexity of the time. Mughal power was declining, provincial politics were unstable, and European trading companies were increasingly militarized. The Jagat Seths acted within a world of shifting alliances, uncertain leadership, and rising global capitalism. Their story illustrates the intersection of economy and politics in the age of colonial expansion. The legacy of the House of Jagat Seth is multifaceted. They represent the height of Indian financial expertise during the Mughal and early colonial era. Champarti Mizbapa, their involvement in political succession reveals the crucial role of financiers in governance. Their fall demonstrates the impermanence of power when political and economic landscapes shift. For modern audiences, their story highlights important themes: the relationship between wealth and political authority, the risks of aligning with emerging powers, the unpredictable consequences of decisions motivated by Bengal's transformation after Plassey reshaped Indian history. The British Empire grew from this initial foothold, eventually ruling over vast territories. The House of Jagat Seth helped facilitate this transition. Their choices contributed to the rise of a new power that ultimately diminished their own. The story of Jagat Seth serves as a reminder that history is not shaped solely by rulers and military leaders. Bankers, merchants, and financiers can hold profound influence behind the scenes. In the 18th century, the House of Jagat Seth stood at the pinnacle of economic power in Bengal. Their financial decisions affected political outcomes at the highest levels. Yet the forces they helped unleash overwhelmed the world they sought to protect. The British East India Company transformed from a trading entity into a colonial empire, using resources funded in part by the very people who would later be sidelined. The House of Jagat Seth rose through commerce and credit and fell through the restructuring of those very systems. Their story offers an essential perspective on the economic dimensions of colonialism, the intersection of local financial institutions with global imperial ambitions. Understanding this history enriches our view of how the British Empire was built and how India's political landscape was reshaped. It also highlights that in history, as in finance, power is never guaranteed, and decisions driven by pragmatic interests can result in far-reaching and unforeseen consequences. The House of Jagat Seth remains a significant symbol of the role that finance plays in the making and unmaking of empires.